Hello, once again, Kenny Jacobs from Bloomington, Illinois. Going to do a video this evening talking about current events as it relates to Bible prophecy. And I really want to go over three main news stories, or maybe four, that I think are all related. And are all related to how the final covenant with many will turn out and how it's going to come together. First, this article is out of the Jerusalem Post today, entitled "The World's Problem with Israel." It says the entire world agrees that there is a universal, absolute, and external moral standard to which all people are accountable. Well, first of all, I don't know that I agree with that. I don't think it's true that the entire world believes that statement. But let's just go on and assume that they do. It says Israel is condemned for a disproportionate number of Gazan deaths in its Operation Protective Edge. The accusation relates to the comparative number of people killed on each side of the recent war between Israel and Hamas. It also relates to the number of civilians killed in each IDF operation as compared with the number of enemy combatants that were targeted. For example, on Sunday, August 3rd, 2014, Israel aimed at 3 Hamas terrorists in the Gaza city of Rafah. At the time of this writing, details about the attack remain unknown. It appears, however, to have been the direct cause of 10 civilian deaths. For the sake of argument, let's assume that this is what happened. On the other hand, then, the total number of Palestinians killed in the war are significantly greater than the total number of Israelis. Subject to the final tally, call it 1,867 to 67. On the other hand, in Rafah, 10 civilians died in an operation aimed at 3 terrorists, a ratio of 3.3 to 1. In the immediate aftermath of Rafah, the U.S. State Department said its nation was appalled by the disgraceful shelling outside an UNRWA school in Rafah that sheltered some 3,000 displaced persons, and in which at least 10 Palestinian civilians were tragically killed, and that, moreover, the suspicion that militants were operating nearby does not justify strikes that put at risk the lives of so many innocent civilians. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon concurred, saying that the attack was yet another gross violation of international humanitarian law. As Israel acknowledges that there are innocent people on both sides, but Hamas contends that all Israelis are occupiers and religious infidels. None are innocent. However, all are valid targets for attack both from the air and above and the ground below. Refusing to claim perfection for itself, Israel admits that it makes mistakes, that in pursuit of the imperative to protect innocent people and not deliberately kill them, accidents happen. Sometimes, too, individual members of the Jewish state deliberately violate those imperatives. But for its part, Hamas admits no mistakes, no culpability, insisting instead that all its members are engaged in a holy war, a cause so exalted, so righteous, the blood of its innocents is a noble sacrifice. And yet the world, the Western world, the United States, and the United Nations, while claiming all this Jewish nuance for itself, condemns the Jewish state. What must Israel do? Israel must and will make a thorough case for its essential justification in Operation Protective Edge. There will be a lot of bluster about what proportion of collateral damage is acceptable, but this is smoke without a fire. The real fire, the roaring conflagration underneath it all, is that there is an independent, existentially separate law to which all men appeal and all men are accountable. Because that law exists apart from humanity, there must be an independent, entirely separate lawgiver, someone who, accordingly, will judge men without exception. Hamas claims this judge is Allah, who mandates and justifies its conduct. For its part, Israel says little, but its very existence on the world stage bears witness to a different claim, a claim that its God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is both lawgiver and judge. The very one who entrusted Israel the selfsame mandate on a mountain called Sinai, a standard of conduct to which he holds Israel strictly accountable, without favoritism, even as he also does for all humanity. The silent witness of Israel to this God provokes the world to an uproar against the Jewish state, this nation, this people, this human proxy for divine accountability that the lawgiver himself has chosen. Um, First of all, I'm so tired of hearing about disproportionate deaths between Gaza, the Hamas, and the civilians there, and Israel. First of all, Hamas is continually firing rockets indiscriminately, just wherever. They can't really control them. They just fire them into Israel, trying to kill as many civilians in Israel, as many Jews as they can. They're trying to kill civilians in Israel. What is Israel doing? They're trying to protect themselves. They're trying to protect their land. And in fact, they go out of their way to try to not kill innocent civilians in Gaza. They fly over and drop leaflets. They warn people. They've made phone calls and sent text messages warning people that they're going to attack a certain area and that the civilians need to get out of there and leave. Hamas needs to realize you don't pick a fight with a much more powerful opponent if you don't want to lose and suffer deaths. And it's not Israel's fault that Hamas keeps firing rockets from schools and hospitals and neighborhoods with civilians in them. Israel has gone out of their way to try to avoid killing civilians. But they also have to do what they can to stop the rocket fire because they have to protect their own civilians. I don't understand why the world cannot see that. I'm blown away by how the world continues to come down and condemn Israel for defending themselves and criticizing Israel because they're more powerful than the enemy that attacked them. And could it also be that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is fighting for Israel like he said he would do and protecting Israel? I've done videos in the past, but I'm going to say it again. If you want to see disproportionate deaths and casualties, read Ezekiel 38 and 39 about the war of Gog and Magog. When they come up against Israel, and Israel is going to be burying the enemy, the dead enemy, for 7 months as God fights for Israel against their enemies and helps Israel destroy them. Enough said on that. I get the UN and Ban Ki-moon, I'm telling you, they make me sick. Alright, let's go on to another article. This is out of the Times of Israel today. Let's pull this up here. And a couple articles out of the Times of Israel I want to go over. First one has to do with Barack Obama's speech today. And I really feel like what the UN is saying, now what Obama has said today in this speech, and I'm going to tie in a couple other world leaders and some speeches that they've made, to the final 7-year covenant with many. Here we go. After reporters slain, Obama urges joint effort against jihadists. Groups such as Islamic State have no place in the 21st century, U.S. President says in fiery speech. U.S. President Barack Obama on Wednesday demanded the world take action against the cancer of jihadist extremism in Iraq after an American reporter was murdered by militants. Again, he demands that the world take action. As U.S. jets continue to strike jihadist targets despite a threat to kill a second reporter, Obama said, "When people harm Americans anywhere, we do what's necessary to see that justice is done." That's a great statement, Mr. Obama. However, I beg to differ because I think you could say when people harm Americans who are not Christians, we do what's necessary to see what justice is done. But what, Mr. Obama, are you doing with Iran and Pastor al-Badini, who's been held over there and tortured and denied medical help from the beatings he's been taking in prison for being a Christian in Iran, and he's an American citizen? What about Kenneth Bay, over in North Korea, an American who's being held prisoner over there. What are we doing about the other Christians around the world who are getting martyred and tortured and persecuted all around the world right now? Let's go on. Obama was speaking after the so-called Islamic State, which has seized much of eastern Syria and northern Iraq, released a video showing a masked militant beheading U.S. reporter James Foley. Obama did not directly refer to Shotloff, which is another reporter that's being held, and his life is being threatened as well. And the Pentagon confirmed that airstrikes would continue, but he paid tribute to Foley and said the Islamic State must be defeated. Let's see here. He says, Jim Foley's life stands in stark contrast to his killers, he said, branding the militants genocidal murderers who target civilians and subject women and children to torture and rape and slavery. That's exactly what Hamas does too, though, Mr. Obama. Why do you keep condemning Israel for defending their own land against them? Let's go on. Their victims are overwhelmingly Muslim, and no faith teaches people to massacre innocents, he said, dismissing the IS claim to represent the aspirations of a global Muslim caliphate. No God would stand for what they did yesterday and what they do every single day, he declared. We will be vigilant and we will be relentless. From governments and people across the Middle East, there has to be a common effort to extract this cancer so it does not spread. Again, here we go about a common effort, people gathering together to fight against some of the radical jihadists. Obama's calling for it. And now I want to go to another story today out of Times of Israel as well, because it's a very interesting tie-in. I can find it here. France urges other countries to join fight against IS, is the title of the article out of the Times of Israel today. French FM says the Islamic State is a terrorist group, is of a different nature and level of danger than others. But again, France and a lot of other countries are condemning Israel for defending themselves against the Hamas terrorist group. But again, let's go on. France's foreign minister on Wednesday pressed all countries in the region, as well as Iran, to join Western nations in the fight against the Islamic State fighters rampaging through Iraq and Syria. We would like all countries of the region to join in this action that includes the Arab countries and Iran. We would also like the P5 to join in this action. Laurent Fabius told a parliamentary committee, referring to the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, we believe that this terrorist group is of a different nature and level of danger than others. As surreal as it may seem, this group considers Al-Qaeda too soft. He warned that IS's ambition spread far beyond the borders of Iraq and Syria. Today it's Iraq, but the caliphate is the whole of the region, and beyond that region, there's obviously Europe. We are all people to be destroyed and slaughtered because the goal of this gang is to kill anyone who does not submit to them, added the minister. Okay, so let's back up here again, where he says they're calling on all countries in the region, as well as Iran, to join Western nations in this fight against the Islamic State fighters. We would like all countries in the region, and even the P5, to join in this action. Again, there's going to be a covenant with many to start the final 7-year period of time. And I'm starting to see again how I think the radical Islamic terror groups, whether it be Boko Haram, who just cooked alive 1,000 Christians and then cut them in pieces. You got all the beheadings going on by ISIS. You got Hamas firing rockets at Israel. The Middle Eastern nations and possibly the P5 are going to come together in a covenant and supposedly go up against or come up or be against the radical terrorism. I see that as a really strong possibility of how this covenant of many will come together. And the UN Security Council again is calling for a renewal to the ceasefire talks and to try to come up with a long-term ceasefire plan. And a day or two ago I mentioned that Israel, one of their demands, says that they want a long-term ceasefire for somewhere between 5 and 7 years, which is the final 7-year period of time. That's how it starts, with a covenant with many. So again, we're seeing all this come together. So let's look at one other article I came across on Google today. And just you see what Saudi Arabia is saying. The Saudi Grand... just refreshed on me. Hold on a minute. Okay, the Saudi Arabia's Grand Mufti says that ISIS is enemy number one of Islam. Saudi Arabia's Grand Mufti, Sheikh Abdulaziz al-Sheikh, the highest religious authority in the country, said on Tuesday the militant groups, the Islamic State in Iraq and ISIS and Al-Qaeda, were enemy number one of Islam and not in any way part of the faith. Although the Mufti and other Saudi clerics have condemned ISIS and Al-Qaeda and other groups before, the timing of al-Sheikh's statement is significant given the gains by militants in Iraq. Extremists and militant ideas and terrorism which spread decay on earth, destroying human civilization, are not in any way part of Islam, but are enemy number one of Islam, and Muslims are their first victims. He later compared them to the Khawarijite movement in early Islam, which assassinated the Prophet Muhammad's son-in-law Ali for making compromises to a rival Muslim faction, and has been seen as heretical by most subsequent Muslim sects. But then he goes on down, and let me get to the bottom of this. He said Saudi Arabia labeled ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra Front, and other groups as terrorists in March, and imposed long-term prison terms for offering them public support or giving them moral or material aid. Early this month, King Abdullah from Jordan made a speech attacking militant groups that used Islamic justification and urged Muslim scholars and leaders to fight against them. So again, we see the King of Jordan, we see the Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia, we see the French foreign minister, we see Obama, we're going to see more and more people calling for all the nations, or at least the Middle East, to come together and fight radical Islam and terrorism. You can see it all coming together. And you can see the one world government and the one world religion forming. Now, real quickly, I almost mentioned this in a story yesterday, but the video got a little long, so I'm going to mention it today. And I don't know, I just think it's just a funny thing. I'm going to go ahead and mention it. Probably nothing to it, but you never know, so I'm going to bring it up. Pope Francis says he may only have a few years left to live and will consider retirement. Let's go on and read a little bit of this. 77-year-old Pope Francis is one of the hardest working world leaders, rarely taking breaks or vacations despite a punishing schedule, and it appears the lifestyle could be taking its toll. And he feels that he may only have a few more years left to live. Pope Francis told journalists aboard the papal plane that he is able to cope with his immense popularity because he knows it will not last forever. The full transcript, the Pope said, interiorly, I try to think of my sins and my mistakes, so as not to think that I am somebody, because I know this will last a short time, 2 or 3 years, and then to the house of the Father. And he said he may only have a few years left to live. And he talks about how he's had to cancel engagements and all that, and then he may retire. What why am I bringing that up? Well, again, I am not calling the Pope the Antichrist. I am not officially calling the Pope the false prophet. However, I certainly cannot rule him out of either role. Period. If that offends you, if you're a Catholic and that offends you, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to condemn your Catholicism. I'm just speaking against your Pope, who even Catholic leaders have a problem with. And if you look at the Malachi prophecy, and it's just, he seems to fit the bill. And this is just an interesting article, simply because he's talking about he may have 2 or 3 more years left to live. Because if that peace treaty gets signed, let's just say later this year or first part of 2015, whatever, that would start the final 7-year period of time. Now, there's a couple other things, by the way. There's so many times the Pope has traveled around the world, and I see all these stories all the time about how he doesn't use the bulletproof papal mobile. He likes to just travel in regular cars. He likes to be seen by the people. He likes to interact with the people. And they always talk about how he's going to be unprotected on the road as he's going through the cities. And again, I just think that's odd that they always point that out. With that happening, and with the Pope saying he may only have a few years left to live, and then using the phrase, I know it will last but a short time. I just think that's a little bit odd. Simply because, let's look at Revelation 12, verse 12. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. Now let's go to Revelation 13. And I'm going to read quite a bit of this chapter. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and his great authority. And back in verse 12, we see how Satan, which is the dragon, is cast down, and he says he knows he's got great wrath and anger because he knows he has a short time. Revelation chapter 13, verse 3, and I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast, and they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth, speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. How long is 42 months? 3.5 years. If the Pope were to die in the next 3 years, 3.5 years, and the peace treaty is signed later this year or next year, that would put it right on track to be somewhere around the 42-month time period when the Antichrist is apparently killed, comes back to life, the world worships him, the false prophet, which verse 11 talks about, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns, 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon, and he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and he causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven and on the earth in the sight of men. And he deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword and did live. And he gave power, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in the right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. And again, if you were to take a look at the Obamacare Act and the RFID implants, called a Class 2 implantable device for a medical registry for your records, will be enforced, and it now has been moved back to 2017. Well, we're in 2014 right now. So somewhere around now to, again, 3.5 years from now, is when the mark of the beast, which could be that RFID chip, would be enforced. Everything just seems weird. It seems like we're really getting set up for some of this stuff to take place. Am I reading too much into it? Oh, possibly so, but I just want to get you thinking. That's the whole purpose of my videos. I want to get you thinking about what the Bible says. I want to get you thinking about the Word of God. I want to get you thinking about current events. And most importantly, I want to get you thinking about where you stand with your faith and with your eternal soul and your eternal destination. Because all the signs that Jesus told us that would be here on the earth, signaling his return, are here. And they are absolutely escalating, just like labor pains, just like the Bible says, birth pangs, which get more and more intense and closer together as the baby is about to be born. The birth pangs before Jesus returns are doing the same thing, and we can see that happening right now. So I want to encourage you, there is salvation in no other name than Jesus Christ, period. He himself said he's the way, the truth, and the life, that no man comes to the Father but by him. And let's just look at Acts chapter 4, verse 12 real quick. Neither is there salvation in any other, for there is none other name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved. Allah won't save you. Your church will not save you. Buddha, the New Age movement, there is no multiple paths and many ways to God. There is one way to God, and that is Jesus Christ. And it is time to make sure you are ready. Give your life to Jesus while there's still time. Time is short. Keep looking up. God bless everyone.